Introduce myself, Cheryl Chambers, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I'll explain that a little bit later. And I am your Associate Dean for Multicultural Affairs here at the university. And it's my pleasure to spend this time with you to talk about what it means to be a Seawolf in this community. And joining me is...
Hi, everybody. My name is Antonio Ferrantino. I'm the Assistant Director for Institutional Diversity and Equity. However, you could call me Tony. So everyone on the campus community or personally knows me calls me Tony, so you could feel free to call me Tony as well.
Okay. We have this lectern here. We're going to kind of work around it a little bit. We can't move the lectern, so we're just going to make things work today. All right? Everybody with us? All right, cool. Okay. So like I said, we're going to be talking about community, because here at Stony Brook, you have joined the community of Seawolves, and community is so important to us. It is foundational to what this university is about, and it definitely makes us real special because we have so much diversity on this campus. It is amazing, in case you haven't noticed. Right. So, our community is founded on some principles and some ideals that were developed by Seawolves, by students just like you not too long ago, and they helped to really lay a foundation for the entire Stony Brook experience, and also conveys what we are about. There's a lot of words up there. You don't have to read them right now, because we're going to talk about them a little bit later on. But we are committed to listening to each other, holding ourselves and each other accountable for upholding the community that we have, because it is very precious, to supporting and being allies for each other when we need to, and of course celebrating all of the rich diversity and our different backgrounds and different experiences here on campus. But one of the things that can really undermine community that we're aware of, and we want to make you aware of as the new Seawolves, is this thing called microaggressions. How many of you have ever heard of the term microaggression? Just raise your hand. Okay, a few folks. Excellent, excellent. Okay. Well, even if you're not familiar with the word, we're going to define it a little bit and talk about it, because this is an insidious kind of thing that happens when people get together from different backgrounds, and we want you to know that here at Stony Brook, microaggressions, we're aware of them, but we really try to work hard to minimize them so that your experience and your experience and your experience is the best that it can be, that you're in a university, in a place where you can learn and you can grow, and you won't have to be stressed and deal with these things. Okay. What is a microaggression? There's a big definition up there. Yeah. Actually, Daryl Wing Su, who is at Columbia University, has done a lot of studies on this, in human behavior and why do people engage in microaggressions. We're going to listen to his definition, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit more.
Well, microaggressions are varying from being conscious, deliberate on the continuum to being outside one's level of awareness and unintentional. Microaggressions really are reflections of worldviews of inclusion, exclusion, superiority, inferiority, and they come out in ways that are outside the level of conscious awareness of an individual.
Okay, so microaggressions, those of you who raised your hands, what do you think a microaggression is? How would you define it? How would you describe a microaggression? What is it? So a lot of hands raised, so I know there's a lot of perspective and knowledge here. What's a microaggression? Well, basically what it is, and these happen on a daily basis, either verbally, or they can actually happen, how we behave and treat each other, or even with signals and things that are in our environment that in a very subtle way, most of the times unintentional, sometimes intentional, but mostly unintentional, that convey some degree of hostility or devaluing or demeaning a person, based upon just who they are, their identities. And we all have identities: racial identity, ethnic identity, gender identity, right? Religion and spirituality is part of our identity. Socioeconomic identity, geographic, we come from different places. Yeah. But when we use language and behavior that is a put down, and oftentimes these are very subtle put downs, then that's what a microaggression is. So that's in essence what all the fancy words actually mean. Okay. Can you think of an example of a microaggression that you've either experienced or that you've observed? Any examples? Anyone want to share? Yes, in the back there. Okay, what she said, for those of you who did not hear, and thank you very much for sharing that, is that she had an experience in a classroom, and she noticed that when students of color who were in the classroom spoke, they weren't given the same degree of attention as students who were white. That's a blatant microaggression. Treating one group different from another. And it doesn't have to be a color. It could be all sorts of other dimensions of our social identities, because we're all different. Anyone else want to share an example?
One down there, but
Oh, thank you.
yeah.
Tony's coming.
What? Okay.
Being treated differently based upon a stereotype or a preconceived idea or an assumption about you or a group that you may associate, affiliate with, and identify with. And the example that you gave was being associated with being a terrorist. Another example, yes. Thank you for sharing those. I'm going to show you some microaggressions because they're more common than we think. They actually exist all around us every day. Take a look at these quotes that I'm going to show you and just think about them for a moment. How many of you have either heard or said some of these quotes? Yeah. Pretty common things, right? But these are all microaggressions, according to what we're talking about here. That's so gay. I went to that class, or I saw that movie, and that was so gay. What's the underlying message when we hear that's so gay? What's your takeaway when someone has said that, or you've heard it, or you've said it yourself? Yes, with the blue shirt. Something negative about being gay. Yeah. Anyone want to answer that? Okay. Yeah, there's something bizarre, negative, not acceptable, wrong about being gay. Can a thing be gay? Yeah. Can a class be gay? Can an experience be gay? In the back. Okay, let's be. I'm sorry, can you talk just a little bit louder? Maybe we can get the mic too. Yeah.
All right, so like a stigma, like they're inferior to other classes of people. So I feel like when people say that's so gay, it's basically them saying, oh, that's kind of like, underlyingly, they're saying like that's inferior or stupid or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. The underlying, messaging here, or what's being conveyed, is that, again, there's something wrong, there's something inferior. Yeah. Now, people can be gay, right? We all know that, right? There's gay bars. There's in restaurants. There's the pride flag that also represents gay peoples, right? But a thing cannot be gay. But yet we say this and we hear this all the time. And that's the thing about microaggressions, is that there's this underlying message. Okay, let's talk about this, you run like a girl. Yeah. Or in sports, you throw like a girl. Ever heard that one? Yeah. Yes. Translation. What is that suggesting and saying? Girls are weak. Girls are inferior. There's something wrong with the way that girls throw or are athletes. Okay. Oh, that's retarded. Yeah, that's so retarded. I mean, in mental health profession, in the profession, the word retarded is not even used anymore. But yet as a society, we've kind of clung to that. That's so retarded. I went to that class, it was retarded. What does that convey? What does that tell you? What do you think about when you hear a statement like that? Something say again? Stupidity. Yeah. Inferiority. Some intellectual, anomaly. Something that's wrong. Yeah. But yet in our community, we have students with intellectual disabilities. So when they hear this being said in community, it has an impact. Just as when someone who is gay or has gay friends hears that's so gay, it has an impact. Or if a female who is practicing athleticism, or even a male, hears you run like a girl or you throw like a girl, it has an impact. So all of these things, really, they undermine our community and what we're about as a community that appreciates diversity, that acknowledges our diversity and our unique and different backgrounds. Okay. This one in the orange, and now I'm really I'll date myself on this one here, because where do you think this statement about not all Muslims are terrorists, but all terrorists are Muslims, that quote comes from? What historical event may have led to that in this country? Yes. 9/11. Yes. When there was a lot of prevailing thought about this. But we all know that terrorism is not assigned to one group of people or people with a particular background, right? That terrorism can come from anyone. But yet this is still clinging in our society, thinking and the statements. Yeah. And of course, when I look at you, I don't see color. Yeah. What's the message there? What do you think the message is? Yeah. I don't see color. Someone? Yes. Thank you. Exactly. Yeah. Because certainly, for some people, not everyone, skin color is indicative of racial and ethnic background, can be. And so if we don't see color, we're kind of erasing that. Yeah. So do you think that when we hear these statements, it's intentional? That people who say these things, or when we say these things, that we mean to convey these underlying, negative ideas? More often than not, no. A lot of this happens unintentionally. Every day, just in the course of going to and fro, in your residence hall, maybe in the classroom, with each other, on the academic ball, in the SAC food court, different places, even outside of the university. Some of this happens so subconsciously that we don't even realize what we're doing. The intent is not to do direct harm and hurt. Microaggressions are not like hate crimes. But they have their foundation in some perspective and degree of bigotry, or the idea that some people who have certain characteristics are superior to other people who have different characteristics. And so we want to be aware that this, that this exists. Okay. So basically what microaggressions do is they expose us and remind us that there's a culture out there that we're always bombarded with, where, and it's predicated on this belief that everyone, or that some people, I should say, are less important, matter less, or less valued, I think as some of you have said this already, than other people. That's not true, right? And it's certainly something that we don't want to promote here at Stony Brook, because everyone matters. You matter. With all that you are, your entire background, your experiences, you're here, and we all matter. From the faculty, the staff, the administrators, your peers, your friends, no one is less valuable than anyone else. Okay. So how does this happen? How do these microaggressions happen, and why do they, and where does this all come from? Happens in an instant, a split second, informing our perceptions and the assumptions that we make, informing our behavior and our sense of reality, what is real, and informing consequences, creating consequences. So every day we take in raw data, information, lots of information. Right? You've taken in billions of pieces of information even today. Right? Even looking at me. Okay? What I'm wearing, my tone of voice, what I'm saying, how I look, the things that I'm emphasizing, bits of data coming in, thinking about it. The cues are these external forces that help us to inform and begin to make sense of that data. So it may be what you read, on your phone, what's in the media now, a conversation that you may have had with someone earlier today. Those are cues. So the cues form the data. And then, in a split second, we filter. Yeah. That is, it's kind of just like a sieve. We try to line things up in our thinking and construct them in ways. And the filters help us to construct and make meaning of that data. Think, what are some of the filters that you have in your thought process. What are some of the influences that shape your thinking? Big influence. Home, right? Siblings, parents, friends, media, social media. We filter. And according to how we filter, then we make assumptions. And the reason why they're assumptions is because the filtering leads us to processing the data, but it's not based on the full story or the total truth or the totality of the experience. I mean, for example, and I'll use myself as an example, be a little kind of guinea pig here, right? Many of you have probably already made assumptions about me. But do you know my background? Do you know my history? Do you know my story? And are those assumptions correct? But we all have a tendency to make meaning. When we see someone who we don't know, or we see them behave a certain way, or how they look, or how they sound, or what they say, we do assign meaning. So we all make assumptions. They happen. It's part of being human. Yeah. But sometimes those assumptions can be correct. More often than not, they're not totally correct. Let me illustrate to you what I mean by that. Here's two images, right? Okay. Let's look at the image that is on your left. Turn to the person who's next to you and tell them what you see.
No, it's going great.
Do you want to, because I just flowed with it, I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. How many of you, when you looked at this, saw an elderly woman, an old lady? Okay, about half or so. How many of you saw a young woman and her silhouette? Interesting. Okay. Believe it or not, you use some cues and some filters to make the assumption and draw the conclusion of what you saw, your reality. Yeah. And one isn't right and one isn't wrong because they are actually both there. Okay. The image on the right. How many legs do you see on the elephant? Turn to your neighbor and let's talk about that.
That one I got wrong.
All right. So I guess, depending upon your perspective, you might see 4 legs, you might see, might be like 8 legs, or the trunk looks like a leg. This is a little bit of like a funky picture, actually. It's kind of a little bizarre. But if you trace like from the top of the elephant's body down, the legs kind of intertwined. Like you could see 2, or you might see 1. Yeah. So what's the point here? Is that we have cues, we have filters, and we see things differently. And this is just an illustration. These are just pictures. But we see things differently and in different ways all of the time. So if we as a community are going to interact with each other and talk with each other and engage each other, we have to allow room for different perspectives. Because the way that what you see may not be what someone else sees. And what you experience and process may not be identical to it. So what does all this have to do with microaggressions? A great deal. Because microaggressions come from a place of this one way, this one perspective, and if things don't line up with that belief or that thought or how you see the world should be, then it can lead to making erroneous conclusions. So back to our discussion about assumptions and perceptions. Assumptions inform behavior. Because we draw a conclusion about someone or a thought, and we may behave, we may treat them differently based upon what that assumption is. Going back to the example that was given earlier, the classroom situation and students of color being treated differently, let's say, from white students. I'm not making race an issue, I'm just using this as an illustration, of course. Yeah. So the behavior of the teacher in that situation played itself out in treating some students different from other students. So our behaviors then shape our reality, as I said earlier. And if the assumption is incorrect, the reality definitely is not going to be on point, right? You with me? Yep. And that can lead to consequences, even more misperceptions. It can even lead to negative behaviors, oppressive behaviors, cause a lot of hurt and harm, even though the intention may not have been to hurt and harm. The impact can cause hurt and harm. Let's look at this on a large scale, because we're a community. You're a community, HDV. You're part of a university community. When we value people less, we associate with them less because we don't consider them important. We don't think they matter. Then we understand them less because we don't strive to try to understand. We don't take the time to learn about their stories, to get to know them, to connect with them. And that leads us to having less empathy, caring less. Just because we didn't take the time, because we didn't value them. And then that leads to us trusting them less, right? How can we be a community if we don't trust each other? To learn, to grow, to help each other. And when a group of people don't trust each other, what can that create? I heard it. Fear? Speak louder, please. Did someone say fear? Chaos. Yes. But actually, fear and violence. Yeah. Fear and violence has its roots in not valuing each other. And we see that played out even on the national stage, as some of these tabloids here show. Yeah. So something as maybe simple or trivial, as subtle as a microaggression on a larger scale, within a collective large community, can lead to fear and violence. It's not hate crimes, but microaggressions aren't. But the root is right there. So if we see this thing and we recognize this, then we can do something about it. So what can you do as a Seawolf? You're here at Stony Brook. Right. We have a community commitment. We want you to be mindful of what you say, how you communicate, how you treat each other. Now, it doesn't mean walking on eggshells. That's not what we're talking about here. But it's being aware and respectful of the diversity that we have here on campus, and thinking before saying some of those quotes and so many more. Yeah. It may happen unintentionally. I like to think that it wouldn't happen intentionally, but it may happen. But be aware. Be self-aware. Challenge assumptions. Challenge the things that you hear your friends say, your peers say, that are here, that are microaggressions. And respectfully challenge it. We don't need confrontation or great hostility, because as we said earlier, most people don't. Sometimes they're not even aware that that's what they're communicating negativity. But we can say, hey, when you said that's so gay, that was really offensive. Do you realize that was hurtful? Challenge the assumptions. Work towards creating an inclusive campus. I think that when we do this, a lot of these other things kind of start to fall into place. If we commit to being inclusive, leaving no one out, making sure that everyone who is around us feels that they belong here because you all belong here, and that we don't say and do things that communicate that they don't belong, that we can then connect and be a really strong university. And so many students before you committed to doing that. And that's why we're talking to you today to in fact, invite you to commit to being inclusive. Yes, we have the diversity. It's a beautiful thing. But we need the inclusivity, regardless of background, regardless of culture. Okay. So let's get back to this community pledge, right? Because this is where we started. Yeah. Microaggressions undermine this, so we have to work at minimizing. We may not be able to eliminate them all, right? Because sometimes people don't change. Yeah. Even, and I'll share with you, I have some family members that have some perspectives from their experiences, and I can't change their mind. But I do, very respectfully and lovingly, point it out when they say something about a group of people or a certain, population that's negative or is a put down in some way. But we all need to commit to this pledge And I'm asking and inviting you to do that today. So let's now take a closer look at it. I'm going to ask someone, volunteer, to read the first half of it out loud. Any volunteers? Read. You're going to class tomorrow, right? You're going to have to read. You got it. Okay.
It's easier here.
Let's check out some of these words and thoughts.
As a member of the Stony Brook University community, I agree to promote equality, civility, caring, responsibility, accountability, and respect. I recognize the importance of understanding and appreciating our differences and similarities.
Excellent.
Shout out to Tyler.
Okay. The second half of it, someone else.
Therefore, I pledge the following. I will not encroach on the rights of others, either as individuals or as groups. I accept the obligation to listen to and understand the beliefs and opinions of others and to treat others fairly.
Okay. There is more, because this is some serious stuff. We need another volunteer. We have some folks on that side, Tony. He's coming around.
It's a lot of exercise today.
Okay. And as you're hearing this, reflect on it and think about it.
Wait, where do I stop?
The first two sections.
I am accountable for my own behavior. I accept that I am, in part, responsible for the welfare of the community itself. I will stand up for the dignity of every member of this community.
And then finally, wherever you want to go.
I will celebrate and express pride in our community's diversity in all its forms: race, gender identity, differing ability, religion, sexual orientation, or any of the dimensions which make each person uniquely human.
Awesome, awesome. Let's give everyone who volunteered a round of applause. Thank you so much. Right. Now, this is available online, so I would invite you to print it out, post it up, and from time to time to really think about it. You know, and even ask yourself, how are you contributing to building community, creating an inclusive environment here? Because we all have that responsibility. Okay. So one of the best ways of getting connected on campus is finding your own communities. And there's a lot of opportunities to do that through clubs and organizations, different areas like our Interfaith Center, LGBTQ services. This is not an exhaustive list at all, but there are even 470 clubs and organizations to be involved in. Even within your own undergraduate college, there will be programs and committees and groups to get connected, to learn about people, and to work together. Social media, if you have not done this, please download the Quark app. It's in the store, the Google store. This is your gateway to even greater connections with the activities and the events and the clubs and organizations and all sorts of things that are happening on campus. And it's also a great way to know what is happening on campus. And move out of your comfort zone. Try something new. Go to an organization's program or event that you wouldn't ordinarily go to. That's how we expand our learning. That's how we grow. That's how we combat assumptions that can happen at times. Sometimes you may be hit with a microaggression. That's the reality here at Stony Brook. Is a reality in life. Right? But if you are, and you need to and want to talk with someone about it, find a trusted staff member or a faculty member and talk about it. It's important to do that. Now, that could be your RA, that could be your residence hall director, it can be an administrator like we are here today, but find a trusted person to discuss it with. And in those situations, that are really heavy-duty situations where there has been such an egregious offense. It could be related to sexual misconduct or some form of discrimination. We have the Office of Institutional Diversity and Equity, and that's Tony's office right here. This office, like all other offices, but they take these offenses seriously, and they're investigated, and they're looked into, and they're adjudicated. Because we're committed here on this campus to addressing these kinds of situations that may occur and looking into them, because you matter to us. We all matter. And then there's a whole list of, or chain here, of many other offices and areas, all a network to really help us to live up to that community pledge. LGBTQ services, judicial standards, or university community standards, my office, counseling and psychological services, our university police, Dean of Students Office, many areas, campus residences, all a network to support and to help you so that you can learn and grow and experience everything that this campus has to offer and succeed in this community, in this environment. So I thank you. I thank you in advance for making this commitment to care for each other, to respect each other, to trust each other as you move forward. Best wishes here. You're a great group, and you're going to do great things. Thank you so much. Before we wrap up, I also want to introduce to you at this university, this is how serious we're about this thing. We have what's called a Chief Diversity Officer. Yes. And he's with us today. Dr. Lee Bitzloy. Woo. Thank you for being here. It's his office that works throughout the university with faculty and staff and students to make sure that our community stays strong and committed to diversity and inclusion, and just really is just a great place. And of course, you're a part of that. So welcome again, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
And good luck with class.
All righty. So we have a little short break between now and the next presenter. So if you need a stretch break, a run to the restroom break, my phone says 1:49. So in 5 minutes, we all have to be back in our seats for the next presentation. But take a 5-minute break. If you need to stretch, go to the restroom, or say hello to our presenters.